What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Basics Podcast, CBS Sports Daily NFL Podcast. I'm Brinson. I'm your host. It is Monday, October 10th. Rear. We got an emergency podcast. Joining me to break down the Matt Rhule firing. Ryan Wilson. We sort of predicted we might be in this position last night. I thought they might wait for another 2 weeks maybe to see what happened against the Rams and the Buccaneers.
Why would you wait?
As I told Breach, sometimes these owners like to try and get a winnable game after they fire somebody to help justify what they.
I don't think you need to justify firing Matt Rhule.
I'm just sometimes the owners do weird things. I also said that David Tepper is the type who doesn't care, is impatient, wants to fire people, and the Panthers have fired Matt Rhule as of Monday morning, I suppose.
So he was hired January 7th, 2020, and I like to sometimes go back and look at the press conference when the coaches were introduced, because it's like, the beginning of your relationship in high school with your girlfriend, everything's, rainbows and unicorns, and then by the end, it's Heathers. I don't even know if you ever watched that movie. You ever watched the movie Heathers?
No.
That's fantastic. But anyway, so I went back and looked at some of the comments. Here's something that David Tepper said at the introductory press conference, or at least speaking with the Panthers media. I think Matt Rhule can come in here and build an organization for the next 30 or 40 years. Okay, that didn't work out. He also said he's impressive in player development, sports science, recovery techniques, intensity of training, integration with the strength program. He started talking about how he develops players and how he's going to pick his staff. And we all went from being in an interview mode to recruiting mode. Everyone just knew. We switched without a word being said. Pro tip, maybe next time some words should be said. And finally, I will leave you with this, which goes back to what you talked about last night on the podcast, Matt Rhule's infamous picture at the owners meeting where he's dressed up like he's wearing his grandfather's clothes and he's 8 years old on his way to church. David Tepper said he dresses like expletive. I can only mean that was the S word. And sweats all over himself. He dresses like me, so I have to love the guy. I was a short order cook. He was a short order cook. Nobody gave him anything. Nobody gave me anything. He had to work hard for everything.
This is Ryan's reading from The Onion, by the way.
This is the introductory press conference where he's ripping the poor man's ability not to dress himself.
Wait, he didn't actually say that, right?
No, he literally said those words.
Wait, he said that?
He dresses like Ish and sweats all over himself. He dresses like me, so I have to love the guy, Tepper said with a laugh, according to Panthers.com.
Wait, what?
I'll put it in Slack so you can read just the very.
I thought you were reading off I thought you were making.
No. Go to the very bottom of this. If you Google Matt Rhule ? David Tepper explains, it'll show up the 2007-2020 story on Panthers.com where he explains how he and Matt Rhule became a couple, and the very last paragraph is him talking about Matt Rhule dressing like a clown.
That is unbelievable. How did I miss that?
I think he's trying to make it sound like they're both everymen, and I get that.
Yeah. Tepper's had a long history of that. He said in an interview once, he said, "I'm basically I'm a blue collar regular dude who just happens to be a billionaire." It's like,
nah. That's not how it works, but okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's just funny to look back at how the relationship changed, and losing will clearly change any relationship, just a matter of how quickly. But yeah, I would imagine Matt Rhule is relieved more than anything. I guarantee. Well, I don't want to say guarantee. I don't imagine. Do you think he's upset by this?
I think he's upset. I don't think anybody wants to get fired, particularly head coaches. I do think that
he's owed $40 million if he never works another day in his life.
Well, part of the reason too why they wanted to move on from Matt Rhule earlier is that they hope that he can find a head coaching job with a college team, and then
because it'll offset that. But what if he just
money? Yeah.
What if he decides to go buy a house, on the coast of North Carolina and just kick it for the next 5 years? They got to pay him, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he never to work again. I mean, but the problem is most coaches are going to try and you don't see you want to grab the momentum because there's not a whole lot of momentum right now for Matt Rhule. But with Matt Rhule, you can at least say, okay, went to Temple, turned it around, tough place to turn it around and be good. Went to Baylor and turned around a really bad situation really quickly. I had Baylor rolling, and in the Big 12.
I think he's going to be extremely popular in the college coaching.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying you can say, okay, maybe it didn't work with Carolina, but that was a tough situation, and it's an NFL thing versus college.
Right.
This is still a guy who can make it work in college.
Yeah, Dennis Dodd was just on HQ saying exactly that.
Right.
The Nebraska job.
Probably not the Wisconsin job, but maybe
Wisconsin's out there. Prisco on Twitter made what I thought was a very honest point, and I actually don't disagree with it. He said, does Matt Rhule cheat to get players? If so, I want him at Arizona State. If not, I do not. And I think that's sort of how you have to look at it, although NIL makes that less problematic, but I still imagine that there's some of that going on.
It's very, very Pete of you, Pete. I think he could be popular. The Nebraska thing makes all the sense in the world.
Oh, it's extremely popular. It's night and day. I mean, you see with Urban Meyer, when he gets his next job, I'm sure it'll be like it was when he was at Ohio State and Utah and Florida before that, and college didn't work out. You see with Nick Saban. Sometimes you're just not cut out to be in the NFL for a number of reasons. I think the biggest reason for at least Saban and Matt Rhule is that if you don't have a franchise quarterback, you don't have a chance, and that's just the reality of it.
So he is less than 3 years into a 7-year, $62 million contract. Wow. Fired 11-27, 1-4 this year, 1-27 when allowing 17 or more points, including 25 losses in a row with that stat. ESPN reported that every other team has multiple such wins in that span. Yikes.
Jay Glazer also tweeted out short time ago, teams will now be calling the Panthers trying to trade for some of their players as they hope Carolina will look to stockpile picks as they rebuild.
As they should.
Brian Burns, Jeremy Chin. I mean, would you trade J.C. Horn or not?
That's a little early to trade that. No, I mean.
Who are you trading? Christian McCaffrey?
I don't think you're trading these young. Maybe Brian Burns just because he wants a big contract.
Christian McCaffrey?
I think they'd love to trade Christian McCaffrey.
All right. Well, that's something else to keep an eye on.
I mean, they just gave DJ Moore a contract, so I don't think you're trading him.
Yeah, I wouldn't get hung up on that. Everyone gets a contract at some point. You got to, if you want to move on, you just move on.
I don't think you're going to trade your rookie stud defensive players on their rookie deals.
No, but I mean DJ Moore. I mean Odell Beckham got traded 15 minutes after signing his new deal.
Right, but my point is more that McCaffrey is definitely a trade candidate, but he has $27 million in. He has actually his salary cap hits are not bad at all. He's a trade candidate. That would be a weird one.
Yeah, So I don't know if we talked about this. Maybe JJ
Moore is not a trade candidate.
JJ talked about this on NFL Today yesterday, the pregame show for CBS, that D'Amico Ryans will be a popular name in general. Matt Rhule hadn't been fired yet, so I do wonder if he's going to be on the short list or. Hey, there's Sully. Just
what's going on?
Materializing out of nowhere.
It's happening,
love it,
fellas.
You're the Bailey Zappi of this podcast.
Exactly.
Come off the bench and crush it.
Robbie Anderson more likely to be moved than DJ Moore. Will McLean says in the chat. That's correct. I mean, DJ Moore's contract just makes it very difficult to move him. I thought McCaffrey's contract was more problematic than it actually is. He you could, if you're willing to deal with, trading for a running back. I don't know what you're going to give up for him, but you could in theory trade for him. I don't think that like Brian Burns. If they decide, I mean, it depends on what they're trying to do. Or like, are they trying to rebuild, or like, what's the deal with what is the Panthers' plan in a post Matt Rhule world? I mean, obviously, it's to hire somebody who can help you win, but you can't just it's complicated because I think that they want to win now. David Tepper wants to win now. It's very clear you can't win now. And if you trade, Brian Burns, if you trade Robbie Anderson, you make it less likely you'll win now or win next year, but you're also getting yourself draft picks to stockpile. And so I think it's a fine line to walk here for Carolina.
Yeah. So go ahead.
I'm right there with you. I mean, going at the long-term future of this team, they got to make a decision at one point or another at the quarterback spot, right? I mean, it feels like they've kind of been patchworking it the last few years, whether it be Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield. None of those guys are going to be the answer. Very rarely
draft somebody because no one wants to come to play in Carolina.
Right. Very rarely are you going to be able to find that quarterback that's already in the league making that next stop, and he's not necessarily going to pick Carolina. I mean, we just saw Deshaun Watson in basically a free agency type of situation. He basically picked his own spot, and he decided not to go to Carolina.
He thought Carolina would be bad for his image. That's how bad it is going to Carolina.
Exactly. A guy like Deshaun Watson saying that.
Carson Wentz said no. Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz turned you down.
And Baker wanted to go to Indianapolis first.
Yeah, Baker only went to Carolina because Carolina was the last.
I think Baker and Carolina were sort of in a pissy match at one point.
He didn't like each. He didn't want to go to Carolina. Carolina didn't want him. Yeah. And I mean, Darnold, like the Panthers have attempted to trade for quarterbacks in each of the last two off seasons. Or they had Cam one year. Then they had Teddy Bridgewater. They released him 1 year after signing him to a $63 million contract. Then they traded 2018. They traded a second round pick or 2 second round picks for Sam Darnold when he was the last guy remaining on the quarterback carousel, and that didn't work out. So then they traded for Baker. He was the last guy
Sam
remaining.
and Baker are making $18 million this year. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but like those have been the last 2 guys available, and the Panthers have been the last team standing. It's like almost like a forced marriage where with a bad franchise and a bad
Well, I got some good news for David Tepper. The Panthers currently have the first overall pick, and that's bad news.
I mean, I would have kept Matt Rhule just to guarantee we get the first overall pick.
Yeah,
I were David Tepper.
Now the pressure is of the 4-ish or so quarterbacks that are going to go first in the first round of this draft.
Which one is going to hold out and refuse to play in Carolina?
Or are the Panthers just going to pick the wrong guy?
Oh yeah, almost certainly. Steve Wilkes is Steve Wilkes is the interim head coach. Of course, Steve Wilkes famously fired after 1 year in Arizona, the predecessor for Cliff Kingsbury. He was, he had Josh Rosen. It was a really, really bad football team, really, really bad year.
Josh Rosen just got cut today by the Browns, by the way.
Of course, naturally. I think I heard Ian Rappaport say that Steve Wilkes will get, quote unquote, very serious consideration for the head coaching job in Carolina.
Wait, who said that?
Rap sheet.
Save your breath. Oh, stop it. Stop with the nonsense. All right, go ahead.
He's definitely on the list.
Yeah, the list has 5,000 names on it. You're on the list. I mean, let's not talk about this being serious consideration for Steve Wilkes. Steve, I'll say this.
Anytime somebody's in interim, they're a candidate for the head coach, man.
I will say this, and I will take anyone's bet on this. The Panthers are 1-4. That's 5 games. What's 17 minus 5? 12. There are 12 games left. Steve Wilkes go 12-0, and he will not get this job. And I will take any bet from anyone otherwise.
Well, yes, he's not going 12-0. That's the.
If he goes 12-0, does he get?
If he goes 500, does he get the job?
No, I just told you. Is 500 better or worse than 12-0?
Worse. Well, it depends on what you want. Do you want the first overall pick, or do you want to be a non-fringe, non-playoff fringe team?
He's not getting serious consideration. Let's just stop.
Well, that kind of goes into what we were talking about a little bit earlier at the quarterback spot too. If you're a head coaching candidate, how attractive is Carolina to you? Is this a spot where you want to find yourself in? I mean, I guess if they have the number 1 overall pick, you can talk yourself into maybe a quick start if you get the right quarterback. But it's not like they have a great run of success at the head coaching spots either.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I mean, John Fox, is that their most successful head coach? George Seifert? Are those two? Brinson, wake up.
John Fox would be the most. Ron Rivera.
Yeah.
Ron Rivera, then Ron Rivera 1, John Fox 2, George Seifert 3.
Okay. I mean, that's not terrible for a franchise that's almost 30 years old, but I was going to say maybe it's the ownership, but David Tepper's not worse than Jerry Richardson, I don't think, is he? In terms of managing day-to-day things?
I mean, it just in terms of like strictly on-field.
Yeah, football-related stuff?
Yeah, he's probably the worst.
Tepper's worse than Richardson?
Yeah, he's way more medley.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's part of the issue, too, to Sully's point. I mean, coaches like to have a lot of autonomy.
But technically, Dom Capers had more wins than. Oh, no, George Seifert was terrible.
Oh, he was? I thought they went to the playoffs.
He was awful. Dom Capers, then George Seifert. Matt Rhule is actually the 5th most winning coach in Panthers franchise history.
Well, there's a selling point, Sully. Like, if you win 3 games, you're going to be in the top 5 all-time wins in Carolina Panthers history. So
that's great. Be sure to tell D'Amico Ryan that, because I'm sure he's excited about that possibility.
I mean, so Ron Rivera was 63-1. He's the winningest.
Oh, that's
coach.
amazing. Okay, that's my bad for
John Fox 73-71, second most winning coach. Dom Capers 30-34, third most winning coach. George Seifert 16-32, number 4, and then at number 5, 10-23. 10-23, Matt Rhule.
Is he last? Have they had any other coaches, or are those all the coaches in history?
Well, they had Perry Fuel as an interim, I think.
Oh, so that they've only had 5 coaches over.
Yeah, no, I mean, he's the least winning coach in Panthers.
Yeah, no, I got it. I didn't know how many.
He's also the 5th most winning coach in Panthers.
Yeah, that's how you got to all about how you couch it.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, he's definitely telling people I'm the 5th most winning coach in Panthers.
All right, Steve Wilkes is apparently going to be seriously considered. Ha 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 ha.
D'Amico Ryans is obviously a name.
Yeah, who else is the young up and comers that we'll be talking about? What about Kellen Moore? And we talked about Dan Quinn all the time.
I don't have Dan Quinn. And
yeah, but here's the thing. Matt Rhule is a defensive guy, And, Ron Rivera's defensive guy before him, Tepper ran out of town. I don't know if that matters or not. But if you want to go offense, you're going to have the first overall pick or whatever, top 3 pick. You get your quarterback. I'm laughing. You do the Jaguars model with Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer, but you don't go get Urban Meyer. You get someone who's not crazy and has his mind focused on football and not going to his own restaurant and getting lap dances. But
Shane Stitchen is a name that could get love there. The Eagles offensive coordinator. Ken Dorsey, former Panthers quarterback.
He's fiery, Ken Dorsey. We know that. We know he won't sit around. And
was in the Panthers as a quarterbacks coach, and then left to go to Buffalo with Sean McDermott. If they have a big year, it's not crazy.
Matt Canada, I would recommend him. I will drive Matt Canada from Pittsburgh to Carolina right now.
In that same vein, Matt Patricia, Joe Judge, can I interest you in any of those guys?
Brian Flores.
Sure.
He's not an offensive guy. I'm just saying, if you want offense and top 3 pick quarterback, you want to do that sort of combo coming in.
Sure.
Well, if you want to do that, and it goes into maybe changing the narrative for Tepper, that meddling owner, too many cooks in the kitchen type of thing. The old Bill Parcells want to be able to shop for the groceries if you're cooking. Do you give it to Sean Payton? Do you give him and say, hey, just run my organization from decision making down to coaching and try to turn this thing around? I will be hands off.
I love that.
Here is the next 5 years to get the franchise back.
Sean Payton's thing apparently was the place he wants to go. He wants to have a quarterback. Los Angeles Chargers makes sense. For example, Miami would have made sense if Tom Brady been there. But what if you give him the keys to everything? Number one, would he do that, Brinson? Number two, could Tepper Jimmy Haslam himself away and lock himself into a closet and not be meddling?
One, I think he'd totally do that. Be like, Sean Payton, you're in charge. Like, tell me, do you want Fitterer here? You want to fire him? You want your own GM? Sean Payton's going to have way more say in personnel than anybody else, than other coaches would, because of his just history of success, and like he's going to demand that. I don't know if the main problem might be what he would have to give the Saints in a trade package to get Sean Payton, because the Saints have his rights through 2024, 2025.
Mm-hmm.
I'll look. Regardless, the Saints are 2024. Yeah, there you go. The Saints are fairly unlikely to trade him within the division. I mean, that.
Yeah, never say never.
It
it feels like Sean Payton's going to be coaching somewhere next year, and it ain't going to be in high school.
Yeah,
or
it was right through 2024.
James.
No, Sean Payton will coach somewhere, but I mean, like, if you're Sean Payton, you're gonna have to give up the picks. They're gonna have to give up so many picks to get you in the division that it's going to hamstring your ability to build a roster. And
John Gruden did that in Tampa Bay and
really,
won.
What would that be? I mean, you're saying it'd be hamstring. It's not going to be a first round pick.
You're not giving up a top number 3 overall pick for Sean Payton to coach.
Not if you have the top 3 pick now.
Yeah,
I think it's more than a first round pick, but depends on where the picks are.
Look, you trade Sam Darnold and Baker Mayfield to the Saints, and you're good to go.
I just don't think the Saints are going to be willing to trade him within the division.
Yeah, that's fair.
D'Amico Ryans would be he's the guy whose defense basically got Matt Rhule fired. Like David Tepper's watching this guy's defense and seeing how good the 49ers are, and watching this guy on the sidelines and thinking, man, this dynamic, young head coach.
I'm going to venture to guess that David Tepper didn't just occur to him to fire Matt Rhule today after D'Amico Ryans kicked his ass. I'm just saying it was first-hand experience watching. Final nail in the coffin. I'll give you that.
I think you mentioned it too, Ken Dorsey. If you want to go offensive side of the ball, that's one to keep an eye on.
Any concern that he's only had that job for 1 year, or you're okay with that?
I think that's fine. It's not like he's brand new to the offensive play calling this year, but it's not like he's never had his hands in the offense. He was with Buffalo all under Brian Daboll.
Yep, agree completely. Could you look at Shane Waldron, given how well Geno Smith is playing?
I think literally everyone's on the table, and especially and this is just speculation, if you want to do the offensive combo of not necessarily young coach, but offensive mind with your young franchise quarterback with your top 3 pick or whatever it ends up being. I think the most important thing, I would argue the most important thing is getting the quarterback right, and the second most important thing is getting the coach right, because you can get the right quarterback like Trevor Lawrence, and you can rejigger the coaching position, which is what Jacksonville did with Doug Peterson. Like Doug Peterson would be great for this job, by the way. Like that would be a
perfect fit.
Yeah, but
I just don't think that Tepper can keep his hands off with the same as the Sean Payton thing. And like, people,
that's
like
the problem.
a veteran coach is not going to want to come here and take over this job
And
because
Tepper doesn't have like kids that are adults, right? Like they're not 30, 40-year-old kids.
I don't.
I asked that because it feels like Stephen Jones at one point said to his dad, "Listen, you can go out and say silly things to the media."
There's nobody who's like of Tepper's family who's like in a position of import with the Panthers to step in and say, "Dad,
hey, pops,
stop."
Yeah, take a step back.
Yeah.
Another name I'd bring up if we want to keep it, the offensive theme going on, and I guess the NFC South theme, Byron Leftwich.
Leftwich,
somebody
awesome,
that
sure.
I mean, if all of a sudden Tom Brady retires at the end of this year, that's a great time to get out of Tampa Bay.
Absolutely. And by the way, no one's mentioned Eric Bieniemy's name. I don't know if he's just fallen off the map. If there are concerns about how he interviews, I have no idea. But it just feels like it doesn't feel like. I mean, we're in October, so who knows? But he's D'Amico Ryan's just a hot name right now.
Yeah.
Which Eric Bieniemy was for the last 2.5 seasons. It felt like a season and a half. So I don't know. I don't know what his.
I think Bieniemy could be in play for sure.
But again, most important thing for me is get the quarterback right.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Quarterback, yeah.
I mean, honestly, I would take Matt Canada as the head coach for a year if you got your 75%.
You got your first round pick.
If you got your 75% of Josh Allen quarterback pick right out of the 4 or 5 or however it's going to be.
All right, cool, good stuff. Anything else on Matt Rhule being fired?
No.
And he should have been minus 5,000 at the beginning of the year to be first coach fired.
Who else is on that list?
I mean, like Mike McCarthy.
Yeah, that tells you all you need. He should have Cooper Rush. That's what they should have had. Well,
Matt
here's
Rhule
hoping
did
that
not make it to Halloween.
Matt Rhule, by the way, is making $840,000 a month for the next 48 months.
It's a good gig if you can get it.
A lot of khakis.
All right, something. Sorry, I was reading up text. All right, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. For Wilson, for Sully, I'm Brinson. We'll see you guys later. Matt Rhule fired. Emergency Podcast. Bye.